Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center in Lubbock, Texas, and we are coming to you live tonight, February, Friday, November 3rd, whatever month this is, Friday, November 3rd, and we're coming to you live right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios and 98.7 FM Walk by Faith Radio. We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and X, and we are bringing it to you tonight. And we hope you guys have had a fantastic week. I really do hope you had a fantastic week. I've had a great week. We had a beautiful night last night in Lubbock, Texas, and got to watch the Red Raiders and the TCU Horned Frogs play, and it was a great night at the stadium. And so I just that was such a great night last night. I'll just start with that. That's we're going to get into some things. We're going to look back at our book tonight. We're going to talk about some ideas that happened. This Friday night's kind of a weekly wrap-up show of the things that happened for this week. And I know a lot of my listeners that are watching us on Facebook and YouTube and X, they catch me over the weekend. So everybody's busy on Friday night. All you guys are taking your ladies out for a date. I know how that goes. Or y'all are at a football game somewhere, or you're out catching the show, or whatever people do on Friday night. I know that they're out there in the world, but they seem to accumulate those views as the weekend goes on through. So I want to make sure that these shows provide you with some wrap up of the things that we did for the week and some encouragement for the week. And in our little intro that we have on the radio, I know you guys on social media can't hear it, and that's why it says "Let's go get it" right there at the end. If you're coming in on the social media part of it, you don't hear that, but I'm hearing that in my headset every time. And it's talking about, in our life intro on 98.7, one of the things that it says is like, hey, how good could you be if you were as good as you could be, right? And what this show is about having someone that is right here with you to try to share with you everything he knows about health and wellness so that you can have the best life possible. And it's a daily thing. It's a daily process of working through those ideas and creating healthy habits for yourself so that you can live a long and prosperous life, right? So that you can shine your light as bright as you can into the world so that you can make the world a better place. And it's a 100% selfish show. I'm doing it 100% for myself. And the reason I say that is because I know if I can make your life better, it's going to make my life better. It's going to make my community better. It's going to make our state better. It's going to make our nation better. And it's going to make our world better. And so that's what this show's about. And I hope that you guys are listening to it, are feeling that. And I hope that you sure understand that's where we're coming from. So, hey, if you got a question, if you want to send it to us on Facebook or YouTube or X, you can send it to us right down there, and we'll get it right here in the office. Or if you've got a question and you're listening to us on the radio, you can send me a text at 806-794-0400, and I will try to answer these on air as best I can for the ones that anybody that has a question for me. And then I'll try to get, if I can't get them answered on air, then I'll try to be sure and come back here after the show and answer some of the questions. So I'll go home and eat supper and answer your questions. So if you feel free, send me a question if you got one. Let me know if I can help you in some sort of way. And then if you're watching it over the weekend and you want to make a comment, I should get all those comments sent to me, and I'll try to answer them, or at least let you know, acknowledge them that I got them for the weekend. So last night we're not live. We didn't have a show. I should do a better job letting you know I'm not going to do that. But we were out at Jones Stadium in Lubbock, Texas. So all you guys that are listening to us from outside of Lubbock, Texas is the home of Texas Tech University. I was a quarterback there in the early 90s. I coached college football for 6 years, and 3 of those years were at Texas Tech. So I spent 7 years as a Red Raider. My wife, Leslie, is a Red Raider. Our daughter, Caitlin, graduated from Texas Tech last December and works for the Double T Varsity Club, which is the athletes, the ex-athlete club there at Texas Tech. And so she's the assistant director there. she's in charge of the tailgates and a lot of the functions that go on for the ex-athletes, and which we have some pretty prominent ex-athletes. I got to meet one of them this weekend. It was an awesome opportunity um, to meet a man that he's nearly 80 years old, one of our ex-players, and he just came up to me and introduced himself to me, and told me his story just a little bit, and I started picking up. I was talking to a legend, and then after I was done, I mentioned it to my daughter, and she knows all about it. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you were talking to a legend." And I was like, "Man, that's pretty cool." He played football here back in the day, in the '60s, I believe he said, and then ended up playing in the NFL for the Detroit Lions for several years. And it's really fantastic. It was fun. It was a fun night. The tailgate was great. It was good to see the old players that I coached, that I played with, and got to socialize. You know, that's the number one thing for your brain, is getting out there and being social. And so we had a really good time last night, just sitting and talking, and then going to the game. It was a beautiful night in Lubbock, Texas. The game day crew, whoever's in charge of the atmosphere in Jones Stadium, is doing a fantastic job. It was great. It was the flyover was great. The flyover was so low, and the pressure and the noise. Everybody in the stadium was like, "Oh my gosh, that was a very miserable experience there for about 5 seconds." And the amount of pressure that came down on us during that flyover. But the flyover was great. The lights in the stadium were great. They did a drone show last night. It was fantastic. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a drone show, but the sky just lights up, and it made a big state of Texas. Put a big double T right in the middle of it. I think at one point we had Raider Red with his guns up. It was really it was amazing. Really, that's so cool to me, because it's a new technology. It's a new technology that people are taking advantage of and creating businesses around and creating entertainment out of something that didn't exist. I don't know, 2 years ago, whatever. I don't know how long of that's obviously new technology that they've got going on right there. And it was really great. Everybody that came in and got adjusted today, that went to the game last night, they all were talking about what an amazing show that was last night. And the band was great. Did a centennial. The going band from Raiderland. I don't go. If you ever get a chance to come to Lubbock and watch those guys perform, that's an amazing band. They do a great job. It was fun to watch, and it's just got it's got the jumbotron and all the stuff that goes along with big time college football, and then the football team performed. They did a good job. It was a good game, and we came out victorious. So that was even better. It started our 4-game win streak. I'm hoping to see, but it was just a great night. It was a beautiful night. It was a little bit chilly, so we got to snuggle up a little bit, got underneath the blankets, had some our coats and our gloves, and we probably didn't need them, but it was kind of fun to get to do that last night. Spend the time with my daughter and her friend and her fiance and Leslie, and we just sat up there and we had a great time. We had a great time at the game. It was lots of fun to go to, and it was good for our brains. It was good for our brains, other than a couple fourth downs or something like that. But we don't, who's keeping track of all that stuff, right? It was good for our brains. It was good time to be out there and get social. And then we got back to work this morning and have had a great day so far. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time at the beginning of the show tonight and just kind of recap the book that we went over on Wednesday, just because I don't feel like I did a very good job with it. We talked for 50 minutes on Wednesday about the book and about the thoughts of the book, but I didn't quite get it. I just felt like I didn't do Charlie justice. So for you guys that didn't see the show on Wednesday, every Wednesday we do a book review, and the book review was on this particular week was on a book that I picked up last Saturday called The Book of Charlie, and the wisdom from the remarkable American life of a 109-year-old man. And I had several conversations this week about the show and about the book, and it was really interesting because they were wanting to know, okay, how did he get to be 109? And it's the same thing it's the same reason I picked up the book. I wanted to know, how did Charlie get to be 109 years old? Like that's pretty good feat. Like they gave the statistics on how many people actually live to 109, and it's not very many people. And so I was kind of wondering. My goal is 113, so I was like, all right, what can I go learn from Charlie? And in the entire book, one of the things that wasn't talked about was diet and exercise. The things that we talk about today. It was really talked about the why. So I want to just give a little synopsis of the book, just in case you want to go read it. But it's about a medical doctor. His name is Charlie White. He's from Galesburg, Illinois. He ended up moving around. His dad was a pastor who also sold life insurance, that died when Charlie was 8 years old and had a very traumatic experience. His dad got caught up in an elevator in a building. Charlie was born in 1905, and so he was 8 years old. So this was 1913 when his dad got in that accident and died. And Charlie was faced with some growing up early situations, and had to really get himself together and understand, hey, look, sometimes things happen in life. And in the book, it presented the idea of stoicism. Someone who's stoic, who just kind of is neutral to emotional responses, or sees things in a balanced perspective. There's good things and there's bad things. But Charlie had a mom and three sisters, and he just had to grow up fast. And then he went off to summer camp and might have had some bad things happen to him at summer camp, and came home and just went on with it. And so he was a really cool guy. He learned to play the saxophone, taught himself how to play the saxophone, created a band for himself, went to college, went to medical school, came home to his hometown in Kansas City. They moved to Kansas City when he was young. That's where his dad got killed. And he went back as a medical doctor, seeing people. And it was really interesting because it was like the 1920s, and there wasn't a whole lot of medication. So Charlie would talk about in his interviews in the book, he would talk about going to do house calls for patients and really just putting them to bed and telling them, hey, get some rest and get over this deal. Because there wasn't a whole lot he could do, because there wasn't a lot of medications out there. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. If you were a medical doctor that did allopathic medicine back in the day, you would kind of there wouldn't be much for you to do if you didn't have drugs or surgery to do. And then he ends up going to war. In World War II, there was a call to have those guys come and be medics, and he went, and he got stuck in a place where he felt like he's being wasted. So he petitioned to learn about anesthesiology. So he did. He got offered an opportunity to go become an anesthesiologist. And then he went back after the war, and he was the premier anesthesiologist in Kansas City for years and years. He did lots of surgeries, helped with lots of surgeries, and practiced way up until, it said at one point he even would go to the hospital when he was 99 years old and make rounds and just go up there and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then when he got into his hundreds, he had some challenging things. Of course, when you live that long, you go through lots of relationships. And the first wife that he had, when they got married, he soon found out that she had some mental issues. She had a really hard time being Charlie's wife. She ended up committing suicide, so he lost her early. And then he went along and then he got married to another lady, and she was a really super independent woman. She was part of a program. It was something I learned from the book that I guess this was in the 40s, but that they didn't let women be pilots. Women weren't allowed to be pilots back in World War II. And so there were a lot of women that wanted to fly, and this particular lady did. And so what they would let them do is, when they built a new plane and they were ready to deliver it to the soldiers, they would let some of these women pilots fly these planes and deliver them to the air bases or wherever where the soldiers were going to go to war with them. And so she was one of those ladies. She was a really independent lady. And Charlie didn't get along with her very well. They didn't stay together too long. They were too like-minded, and they ended up getting divorced and moving along. And then finally, Charlie found the love of his life again. That's kind of funny. He found the love of his life again, and ended up getting married, having some children, had a family. Of course, now his wife ended up in a nursing home when she was in her 80s or something. She was about 20 years younger than he was. So he finally ended up meeting her. He finally, when he was 102 or 103, something like that, ended up in the same nursing home with his wife, and got pneumonia when he was 107. When he was 107, he got pneumonia, and they thought he wasn't going to make it, and he just pulled right through it. And then he decided he's just going to keep going, and he got all the way to 109 and died on his birthday on August 17th of 2014. So amazing story of a guy who just kept going. And the biggest thing about it was his why. That's so funny, because that's the first thing we talked about. It's the first thing we talked about when we started this show. Is I'm going to share lots of information with you over and over and over again about the what's, because people always want to ask me. They want to ask me, what kind of exercise should I do? What kind of food should I eat? What are the things that we should do, right? What supplement should I take? Those are all questions I get all the time, and those are important questions. But I really believe that they are secondary. They are secondary to your why. Your what's are secondary to your why. What is the point of you being healthy? And Charlie's book was an entire book about his why. He just kept going. He had something to do. And I really believe, I've believed this for a long time, that your cells, the cells of your body, if they know they have something to do, if you keep them moving forward and anticipating, hey, I got things to do. There's things I got to get done. I really believe those cells, if you'll treat them right, will keep on working and keep on working and keep on working. And so if you've got something to look forward to, if you've got something that you're trying to accomplish, no matter how old you are, that's what. So last night when I was standing there talking to that old timer at the I'm not going to mention his name just because I didn't ask him if I could, but I was just sitting there talking to him, and he was said, my son-in-law is a chiropractor, he told me, and he went to Parker College where I went to Parker College, and he said, yeah, I've got too many metal parts. He said he wouldn't even touch me. And I've only told two patients in 19 years of being a chiropractor. I've only told two patients that they shouldn't get adjusted. Over hundreds of thousands of people that I've met. I don't know how many people I've met in this 19-year period of time. I've done over 100,000 adjustments. I know that to be true, but I've met a bunch of people, and I've only told two people that they shouldn't get adjusted. And one of them was the strangest case. That this lady, when she was 13 years old, she got a super high fever. And when I saw her, it was back in 2006 or 7, and she was late in her 60s at the time. And she was she came to the office, and when she was 13 years old, she had a super high fever, like 105, 106 something fever, and they put her in a really cold tub, like a bathtub, with trying to cool her down. And the story that she told me was it locked her knees up. Now in 2005 or 6 or 7, whenever it was that I saw this lady, I didn't understand what to do with that, and it was super complicated, but she literally could not bend her knees. And so when she sat in that chair, her knees, when she would sit down in the waiting room chair, her legs would stick straight out in front of her. Like literally straight, like sticks, like she had sticks in the back of her jeans. And she could not bend her knees at all. Her legs were straight. And when she stood up, she had to slide to the end of the chair and kind of push up on the chair and just kind of get up on her legs, on her feet. And then when she walked with her feet like she did not bend her knees at all. And the first day that she came in, all I did is work with her with an activator. It's a little clicker. It's a mechanical thumper. It just kind of clicks. And all I did is adjust her with the activator. That's the only thing we did with that first day. And when she came back on the second day, she said, "Man, I feel horrible. I don't know what you did to me, but I didn't handle that at all." And I was like, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but if when we go to work on you, there's probably going to be some change. You've been locked down since for 55 years, basically. She hadn't been able to bend her knees for 55 years. I was like, I don't, and I didn't even touch her knees. I just worked on her nervous system and worked on her spine. And she was like, well, I like the way I am. And I told her, I said, you probably don't need to get adjusted then, because you're going to be different if you get adjusted, right? So that was one of them. And then I think I told the story about the other lady at one point, but she was a preacher's wife, a first row Baptist kind of family. Everything was perfect to the eye in public, but everything behind the scenes wasn't so perfect. And her whole identity was being sick. So she would get lots of love from the people at the church because she was sick. And so it was really interesting. She got adjusted a few times and she started feeling better and she started getting energy. And she called me one day all in a fuss. And she was like, she said, Dr. Clemmons, I something's wrong with me. And I was like, what's wrong with you? She's like, I just have so much energy. I just feel like I need to go do something. And then she told me, I feel like I need to tell someone to go to hell. And I just thought that was so funny. I was like, well, is it me? And she said, no. And I said, well, go ahead. Maybe that'll get that off your chest. You can move along with your life. And so she got adjusted one or two more times. And she was really worried. She was really worried that she was going to hurt her. Like she was going to ruin her life because she was going to get well and she didn't know what to do with that. It was complicated for her because she was getting lots of love from all of her people around her because she was sick. And she didn't want to get well and lose that. So she quit. And I told her, I said, well, you're probably not going to want to get adjusted because you're probably going to get well. And then that's going to be disappointing for you to be well because you don't know what to do with that. So those are the only two people that I have ever told that, no, that's not a good idea, that you shouldn't get adjusted. So it doesn't matter if you've got rods and screws and plates and all kinds of stuff going on, right? We'll obviously work around all those things. But the guy that I met at the tailgate, he was like, I said, well, he's like, you probably wouldn't want to touch me, he said, because I got fake knees and fake hips and I got so much metal in my body, you probably wouldn't want to touch me. And I said, no, sir, that's not the way I work. You're only 80 years old. You still got 29 years to beat Charlie. Like, that's what I was thinking in my head. I didn't tell him that because he obviously doesn't know who Charlie is. But that's what I was thinking in my head. Like, wow, how did Charlie go from 80 to 109? Like, because 80-year-old people, they're old folks, right? If you're an 80-year-old person out there, don't people say, man, you're getting old? Yeah, a lot of people look at 80-year-old people as old people. And I was looking at 80-year-old people as an 80-year-old people as, dude, we still got to get you to go all the way to 109. Like, we shouldn't stop now. So it's an interesting thought, right? It's an interesting thought when you think about giving your cells a reason to keep living so that you can have something to do with them. Like, and that's just I think if you do that, you got a chance. If you don't do that, I think it really increases the chances that you're not going to make it. And it's going to increase the chances that you're going to have problems too. And it's going to increase the chances that you're going to start developing those chronic diseases because those cells are going to lose their purpose. They're going to lose their desire to really want to get after it. And no, that's not a Huberman scientific statement, right? I'm saying that based on my clinical experience and the things that I've studied over the last 23 years working on chiropractic and trying to help people to be healthier. So it's not some paper I can cite. I'm just telling you my life experience. And that's what this show's about, is life experience. So it was, if you want to read a good book and you want to get attached to old Charlie, it's a pretty good little book to read. Won't take you too long. Um, and you probably would enjoy it. So, and if you want to, it's not going to tell you what. It's just, if you'll read between the lines and listen to all the stories and all the things that Charlie went through, then you'll start to see what the what's. And that was a really cool book. I thought it was great. I got attached to him, and by the time it was over, when it said he finally passed away on his birthday, I was like, I had a little tear in my eye because I felt like Charlie and I were friends. Like we learned, I went through all those adventures with him. I really appreciate David Bondrelli, the author of the book, for writing the book. It was a good book to read. So, hey, when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about some ideas that um, we had this week to kind of wrap up this week on the weekend show, the weekly wrap up show. So you guys stay tuned if you're listening to us on the radio, and we'll be back in just a few minutes and with the second half of the show. Thank you. And from the Facebook group, I wanted to just read some of this. I just want to read a couple of the things because Charlie got to be in at the very end. They kind of asked him. They asked him what he thought. To give us some advice is basically what he said. And he always just said, I just plowed along. That's how I got there. He had adopted his mother's philosophy, which was so simple and served Charlie so well. Do the right thing. That was a very practical philosophy. He continued. If you do the right thing, it covers a whole raft of situations. That's what his mama would tell him. His mama was too dang busy. After the age of 8, she didn't have time to figure out how to handle everything that was going on in her life, plus 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy. And so she just kind of narrowed it down for him and said, do the right thing. Um, Warming up to the question, Charlie went on and said, I always say, this will pass. Whatever the challenge, you've got to work through it and hold the line and don't fall apart. Stick in there. There's no future in negativism. And finally, nobody's going to do it for you. You got to do your own paddling. So keep your daubers up no matter what. That was one of his favorite sayings right there. And so after everybody kind of left him, he kind of thought about it, and he wrote some things down in his diary. And it says right here, Charlie sat with his notepad and distilled his philosophy of life. He filled the sheets of paper front and back in flowing ballpoint pen. Charlie was a man of action. He wrote in definitive command, and this is what he said: think freely. That's where he started boldly, is what David said. Practice patience, smile often, savor special moments, feel deeply, observe miracles, make them happen. Be soft sometimes, cry when you need to, make some mistakes, learn from them, work hard, spread joy, take a chance, enjoy wonder. Those are the things that Charlie had to say to us about how he managed to keep himself going for 109 years. And so I thought that was great. I love that book, and I got to appreciate old Charlie. I appreciate his life, and it just because he lived and someone told his story, then I feel like my life is just a little bit better. So I don't know what else you can say about a person that is better than that, right? Because you lived, my life was better. I think that's the ultimate compliment that anybody could say, and I hope someday somebody says that about me way a long time from now when I'm gone. So, all right, we're coming back to the show. Hello, everybody. We're back. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and you are listening to us on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. So we just got through talking about wrapping up the weekend, talking about Charlie and the book of Charlie. And so I wanted to just go through a couple of thoughts. I wanted to go through some thoughts that patient said to me through the week that I think would be I think would be interested to talk about. One of them was this morning. Um, I take care of a girl who works for a daycare, and she's got a child that really has some challenging situations that goes to that daycare. He's he's I don't know what if he has a diagnosis. I don't know exactly what his problem is that he deals with, but it's definitely a problem for him. And he's a behavioral issue child, and he bites and he throws fits, and he really has a really hard time getting along with the other kids and all this stuff. And so I'm always asking about him when she comes in and gets adjusted. And I mentioned him a couple times, I think, on the show. But today was really interesting because she said to me, I asked him, I said, "Hey, how's our little man doing?" And she said, "Oh, today he was crazy as ever. He really had a hard time." And I said, "Well, is he taking any fish oil yet?" And she just kind of laughed, and she was like, "Oh, he would choke on those big fish oil pills." And I said, "Well, we've got different types of fish oil pills for little kids, and we've got liquid you could put in some sort of drink or smoothie or something like that. There's multiple ways to get that, or we could get him some fish. That would be a crazy idea." And she said, "Well, he sticks to exactly what his mom puts in his lunchbox, but he only eats the breading off the outside." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's an interesting thought right there." Right? She said, because the girl said, "I don't really know how he's getting any protein." And she's a cute little young 20-year-old girl. And she's serious as she could be. And she's trying as hard as she can to help him. She's not his doctor or anything. She's just working there at the daycare. But that's what she said to me. She said to me, he just eats the breading off the outside and leaves the rest of it, the inside, just in his lunchbox. And that's a sign for me. That's an indicator for me. And her aunt was with her. Her aunt brings her in, and her aunt was like, "Yeah, because that's the yummy part, right?" But I just want to present for consideration that's not what's happening with this little guy. And I really don't. I've never seen him. I've never met him. I don't know anything about him other than what I get from her when she comes in. But let's talk about the things that we talk about as wellness people, right? Because as wellness people, why would that happen? Why would a person eat a little kid just eat the outside based on what we think we know about health and wellness? Why would this little kid just eat the outside of a chicken nugget or something like that, or whatever his breading is, and not eat the inside, right? So what we always talk about is going back and drawing our picture of our brain. And what do we talk about is dopamine is on the dopamine is on the left side of the brain, and adrenaline is on the right side of the brain, right? So we always we're talking about how the up and to the right and over to the left part, that's the way that things work. Remember, and we go back again one more time to our graph from Dr. Lustig about dopamine and how there's this sweet spot of dopamine over there in the middle. And if you're low on dopamine, you don't have any motivation. And if you're high on dopamine, you're very irritable, right? So this little kid is very irritable. He's very irritable, right? But he's not getting this pathway properly. That's my guess. I don't know the kid, but just from that one thing that she just told me, based on what I know about the kid, and the one thing that she told me is that he eats the breading off the outside of it because the breading tastes good, right? The breading is what is it tastes good, but that's not why we eat it. It's not about on our tongue, it's about on our brain. It's not what it does for our tongues. It's what it does for our brain. And what it does, what I'm going to present for consideration is that this little pathway that goes from right to left is not working properly. And so there's an anxiety that hangs around over here on this right brain. There's an attention deficit problem over here on this left brain. And there's a decreased amount of dopamine that's going on in that left brain. So what's he going to do? He's going to eat all the bread off of that, of whatever he gets. That's going to be his life. He's going to eat the bread off of it. And then he's not going to eat the protein because why is he eating the bread? Right? He's eating the bread to try to get the dopamine. That's my guess. That's without even seeing the kid. I'm not trying to analyze him as far as treating him, but I just wanted to share the thought with you, right? Because, like, do you find yourself eating the cinnamon rolls? Do you find yourself eating the sugar? Could you? I went and got my haircut this afternoon, and my stylist. That's what I like to call her, my stylist. My hair's not even long enough to style, but that's my girl. She's. You want to ever get a great haircut? Yes, Stout's Barbershop right here in Lubbock. Chinchi Crisfield, she's your girl. So, but right there, she said to me, she's like, did you trick or treat this week? Did you eat a bunch of candy? And I was like, no. It's this matter of fact, yesterday was 20 months since I've had a piece of candy, right? So, no, I'm done with the candy. I don't even need it. And I said, yeah, we can have it in the house now. It won't make any difference. It won't make any difference to me. I'm done. It's past my brain. My brain's done with it, right? But if you find yourself needing to eat the bread off of something, if you find yourself needing to get yourself some sugar, she said, what do you do when you have a sugar craving? And I'm like, I don't have sugar cravings. And she just it blew her away. It was too much to think about. It was like, I don't understand that. Well, if you would have talked to me 2 years ago, I wouldn't have understand that either. I would have said the same exact thing. What do you do with sugar cravings? And the sugar craving I'm going to present for consideration is not a tongue thing. The sugar craving is a brain thing. The sugar craving is a dopamine thing. It's this. That's what we're looking for, right? That's what we're looking for. So I think that's going on with the little guy. I think he's not functioning properly because where do you say, Jason, where do you get this idea? Remember, okay, they put the mice in a cage. They put a group of mice in a cage. They gave them 2 different water supplies, meaning 2 little, I don't know, little water tanks or whatever mice drink out of. They put 2 different water supplies inside the cage. One of the water supplies had sugar. It was sugar water. The other water supply was no sugar. It was just plain old water. Right? So what did the mice do? The mice, what did they drink? They migrated over to the sugar water. The mice drank the sugar water. Why? Oh, because it was tasty. They loved the sugar, right? No, that's not the truth. Because they took the mice out of the cage, they cut their sweet receptors out of their tongue so that they couldn't taste anything sweet. And then they put the mice back in the cage. And then after that, they went 50-50 to the sugar water and to the non-sugar water, which makes sense because what do they care? They don't know the difference between the two. They just migrated towards each side, right? So then what was the story? They left the mice in the cage over the weekend or over a week or something like that. And what happened to the mice? What happened to the mice that had surgically removed sweet receptors off of their tongue? They all moseyed back over to the sugar water again. And the question is, why would they do that? Why would a mouse with no receptors on their tongue, in order to be able to taste sweet, why would they go over and drink sugar water versus regular water? Because the sugar is affecting the brain. The sugar is not about the tongue. The sugar is affecting the brain, and it can be affecting the brain directly, or it could be affecting the brain indirectly by going into the gut and feeding those crackhead bacteria that are in the gut that are feeding off of the sugar, and then the crackhead bacteria are hijacking the vagus nerve and feeding the brain to tell the brain to keep giving us more sugar. That's the way it works, I think. Those are two of the ways that it works. It goes into the brain through the nervous system, and it increases the dopamine, and they get a reward, or they get to determine what their reward is by getting the sugar, or the sugar goes into the gut and feeds the crackhead bacteria, and then now the crackhead bacteria are sending the signal, because the vagus nerve is 85% sensory. What does that mean? It's flowing into the brain. So there's a lot of information that's going into the brain right there that's coming out of the vagus nerve. That was what I believe was my problem 20 months ago. I really believe that. I believe that I got my microbiome jacked up after I got COVID. And then all of a sudden my weight went back up because I wouldn't quit eating all of those refined carbohydrates. And then after 40 pounds of that, I finally figured out, I think what I've done is what has happened is getting COVID has jacked up my microbiome. I didn't take anything for it. I don't do that stuff. I'm not gonna, I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't go to the doctor. So I don't know if I have COVID. I've never been COVID tested, nor will I ever be COVID tested. It's not a thing that I'm interested in. And so, because when I get a fever, I go home and go to bed. And did I get a fever? Yes. And it was 102 fever, and it lasted for 11 days. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process of it. Like, think about old Charlie, right? Maybe I'm stoic. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe I'm brain damaged. I don't really know which one of those things might be the case. Probably all of them. But I went home and just stayed in bed, and I analyzed the process, and I enjoyed the process of 102 fever for 11 days, and just was like, all right, let's see how this is going. Like, okay, some days I was so exhausted I couldn't walk to the bathroom. Like, I didn't even want to walk, right? But what did I do? I got my butt out of bed, got up, and went for a walk twice a day, right? So that's me. That's my life. That's the way I handle it. That's just a way that I do it. But I'm pretty sure in the process of all that, I messed up my gut microbiome. And when I did that, I think then all of a sudden, those little crackheads down in my gut. So what's happened this week, right? We've gotten exposed to a bunch of sugar. And if you were like I was for 50 years of my life, you enjoy it. You eat it, and you love those Reese's cups, and you love those all that sugar that we get, right? And then what happens to you? You keep feeding those crackhead bacteria. And then what do? They keep feeding, and here goes the vicious circle, right? So that's something that you got to be aware of this week. We just finished Halloween. You might have a whole bucket of candy that's still left at your house. And if you have a bucket of candy that's left at your house and you're eating it, you're feeding those crackhead bacteria. You're messing up your insulin, and you're causing yourself to have some serious health issues if that's what you're doing. So I'll just present for consideration that you might want to think about your why. That's what I'll present for consideration. You might want to think about your why and ask yourself, is what you're eating out of that bucket? And I know how ridiculous I sound. I know I'm the only one that's talking about that, right? No one else in your life is going to talk to you about that. It didn't even make any sense. Come on, Jason, quit being so ridiculous. That's fine. But I'm just, maybe one of you, there might be one person out there that just stops for just 1 second and thinks to themselves, is he right? Is he talking to me? Well, if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, I'm looking right at the camera. I'm talking to you. We are spending our Friday evening together. If you're listening to the radio, I'm speaking right into the microphone, and I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you, and I'm hoping that if you're making those choices, that's ruining your life. If you're like that ox to the slaughter that we talked about on Monday, Proverbs 7, verse 22, go back and read it. Go back and read it and see if that's what you are. That ox to the slaughter that just has to have that candy tonight, right? If that's you and you want a better option, there's better options for you. So that was one of the things that happened today. Didn't mean to get to preachy there, but that was one of the things that happened today. That conversation about the little guy that I really thought was pretty cool. The one of the other questions that I got this week that you guys might not know anything about that I thought was pretty cool, kind of changing gears right there, is one of my patients came in and they said, "Hey doc, do you adjust extremities, meaning arms and legs?" Right? And the answer to that question is yes. Yes, chiropractors can adjust your ankles. They can adjust your toes, your ankles, your knees, your hips, your wrists, elbows, and shoulders. And I do it every single day. Yes, we've got lots of training in adjusting extremities. And so if your elbow's not working or your wrist isn't working or your foot's not working, yes, your chiropractor can adjust your extremities. That's something that you should know. This particular person went hiking in Arizona, took a bad step, hurt a pop in the knee, and is pretty sure that there's something torn in the knee. Went to see his medical doctor. They gave him an injection in the knee, and then he came to see me, and we worked on it a little bit, tried to do some of the things that we've done. And he said the knee was better, but it's still sore today. So we'll see how it progresses. But yes, that is something that you might not have ever even thought about, or it might have been something that was totally outside your norm, and you're like, you mean my knee can get, like, you could actually go to the chiropractor for your knee or your foot? And the answer to that question is yes. Yes, chiropractors do adjust extremities. We do adjust extremities at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and we do that almost on a daily. Well, we do. I adjust extremities from a neurological standpoint on every patient. So every patient, I'm going to work on your wrist, elbow, and shoulder, all of you, all the ways. But it's just, I might just work on your left wrist, elbow, and shoulder, because your left wrist, elbow, and shoulder is going to fire to your right brain. That right upper brain is where you're going to get that information to travel. And that's that pathway that I'm trying to fire, is the up and to the right, over to the left pathway, right? So we're going to adjust extremities from a neurological standpoint, but we're also going to adjust extremities that might not be functioning properly and letting you know it. So that was just another thing that that I talked about. One of the gentlemen that came in this morning, he's the father of one of my patients, and he's here visiting. And he's actually from France. I think he's English. I think he lives in France. I didn't get the whole story, but at one point he was in Haiti. He said he was in India when he was a teenager. So this man obviously has lived all around the world. And I asked him if there was any chiropractors in France, or if he'd ever been adjusted. And he said something about, he used some French word, and his daughter said, "Dad, that means physical therapy." And he was like, "Yeah, and there's something about osteopathic medicine." And so I was like, "Yeah, well, I thought that'd be fun to talk about just for a second. We'll just talk about in the early 1900s, the late 1800s, D.D. Palmer, 1895, D.D. Palmer was the one that started the idea of chiropractic, and he started it basically with the idea of pressure on the nervous system causes the body to malfunction. And there's the father of osteopathy is Andrew Still, and Andrew Still's basic idea was to balance the fluids of the body, right? So your DOs, the fundamental starting point for the osteopaths was to balance the fluids. Look at the blood, look at the hormones, look at the lymph system, those things. That's what the osteopaths do. But they were both looking towards the spine back in the old days. That's why the old DOs like Harlan Wright, the guys that used to be here in Lubbock, Texas, those guys used to adjust from every now and then. They would actually, that's where the philosophical differences get in between chiropractors and osteopaths. But in the chiropractic world, we like to call it adjusting. They call it manipulation. They would manipulate the spine. We adjust the spine. It's all in the philosophy right there of the difference. And we think that matters. So, but I'm not going to get into that tonight, maybe on a different show. So that was another thing that makes us similar. What happened to the osteopathic profession is that they got an opportunity to move into the medical profession, that like get invited into insurance and get involved in it from that side. And then they kind of had to give up some of their fundamental roots in order to play that game with those guys on that side. And so they went across there over into that direction. And now a lot of times when you go see a DO, it's just it's the same as going to see an MD. A lot of those guys just kind of they didn't really get that fundamental thing that was the founding principles of their profession, and they do a lot of work that's not very much different than if you went to see your MD. But if you go see your chiropractor, most of them are different. And then nowadays it's getting to be where a lot of the chiropractors are trying to be MDs, or they'll have nurse practitioners, or they'll be nurse practitioners. And now they're doing injections and all kinds of different stuff to be more like that. And it even creates a bigger division amongst us. That's great for me. I love it. I think it's fantastic. The more different I could be from that model is the better, as far as I'm concerned, because and you know how I feel about that. The alternative, complementary and alternative medicine is when chiropractic doesn't work and wellness doesn't work, then you go do the alternative options like drugs and surgery. But so far, chiropractic's been working pretty dang good for me. I'm 53 years old, got my first adjustment when I was 17, have only had one Tylenol in the last 23 years. So it's working out great. I'm gonna keep it going as long as I can. See if I got 60 more years to go before I get to 113. So I'm looking forward to that. So we got lots of stuff to do, and we're gonna keep that going. The last little part of the segment I wanted to just hit on is something that we hit on earlier in the week about how our brains work differently when we're stressed out. And I've got 3 minutes to go, and I wanted to present just real quickly a few different ideas. Let me see if I can pull this up for you guys that are on the radio. We're going to have to talk through this, and let me see what I can do here. But we do a right eye test in our office, and the right eye test is trying to measure brain activity, and it's trying to see how the brain is functioning. And when we do the right eye test, what we get an overall score, and then we get individual scores on individual parts of the brain. And it gives us, whenever we pursue, our eyes pursue, that's testing one area of the brain. Whenever our eyes go quickly back and forth from one thing to the next, that's another area of the brain. And whenever you focus on one thing and you just look right at it, that's another area of the brain. And so the test gives us some idea about what's going on. And this was the test that we're looking at today. The person started, their very first time we scanned them was they ended up with a 62. And then when you look at the three areas, they had a 62 in the fixation, which is the brainstem. They had a 62 in pursuits, which is the parietal lobe. And then they had a 26 on that frontal lobe, right? And that's not great. That's not what we want. We don't want that frontal lobe to be that weak. We want to try to get that thing to increase. Well, today was a day for a rescan. So we rescanned the patient, but she told me, oh my gosh, this was a Monday on a Friday. This was super stressful today. I had a super stressful day. And what showed up on the test was really interesting. When she said to me, after we tested her, then she told me, man, this was a really stressful day. Well, what is she saying right there? And what happens whenever what did we see on the test? Well, the test went from a 62 to a 43, her overall score. Her fixations, her brainstem went from a 62 to a 41. Her pursuits went from a 62 to a 48. And that frontal lobe dropped from a 26 to a 23. So what does that mean to me? Well, it means I got to get better of taking care of her. That's one thing it means. I got to be responsible for throwing it and getting it caught. But the other thing that it means is that it's like, hey, look, when we get tired, our brains don't work the way they're supposed to. They actually work worse. And that's what I told her. I said, hey, you could hang out with some of the other people that are in your business, and if they're really tired too, you guys could get a committee together, and all you tired people could just run your business right into the ground. That's exactly what will happen if you guys don't get that straightened out, right? So you got to be super careful and make sure that you're not going to make your run your program down. When your brain is tired, it doesn't function the way it's supposed to. Thank you guys for listening to the show. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. We'll be back on Monday with another live show, and I'm sure it's going to be exciting. I'm going to be excited to be here. If you guys need anything from us, let us know. And we'll talk to you on Monday. Yeah, so for the Facebook group, that's that's an interesting that's an interesting little deal, and I could go through several of those, and I want to go through one more before we leave because um, I want to show you. I just want to show you the difference. This person is not athletic. This person doesn't do a lot of exercise, and but people are sometimes may wonder. It's like um, you always show us these jacked up scans. Is anybody healthy? And that's a fair question because I wonder that sometimes myself. But this one, now look at this scan. Oh, I lost my camera. Okay, sorry. I hope you we went black there for a second, but we're back. And all right. So what I was going to show you was I was going to show you this scan right here just before we leave and break for the show. This is a person who exercises. This is a super fit. This is a super fit woman who exercises, and that's man. I'm losing my camera. So there's the difference right there. That person is someone who exercises on a regular basis, and she scored a 94 overall. She had a 92, a 71, and a 76. And then when we rescanned her, 95, 76, 75. So she's doing fabulous, and she's continuing to do fabulous in her brain. So there are people who function better. There are people who function better regardless of um, there are people who exercise whose brains function better. That's the point I'm trying to make. If you exercise, your brain will function better. And that's the point of what I'm trying to say right there. So that's the end of the show. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Call me if you need me. And otherwise, we'll see you back on Monday.